Welcome to Meet the Candidate. Today we're joined by Matt McWilliams. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to be here.
Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I came to Queen Creek in 2011, moved here from my home state of Arkansas, and brought my job here. So we had visited the location, the Southeast Valley, Gilbert and Queen Creek, about 3 times, and every time we came, we felt like we should move, and we eventually made the trip, and have no regrets. Queen Creek is a great place to live, and we're so excited to be here. And brought my job with me, and I do a lot of things, and I'm a compliance manager right now, but I'm also a licensed attorney. I've owned a title company and done real estate law, probate, estate planning, lots of things that I've done, and I'm just really happy to be here. I'm happy to be running for town council again as well, and spending a few moments talking with you.
Well, that's great. You mentioned running for town council again. So you were a candidate when?
I was a candidate in 2016.
And what kind of feedback did you receive then?
Well, I will say, so I didn't win a seat on council, so that is, a slightly negative feedback. And as you know, the race was in 2016. It was a pretty crowded field. I was relatively new to the town, 5 years. I mean, that's still, it's much as we've grown now, that may seem like a long time, but at the time, it wasn't quite as well known. And made it through the primary, so I was one of the 4 candidates for the remaining 2 seats, and Jeff Brown had already secured his seat. And I came in third in the general election, around 70 votes. So the experience was good. No one wants to come in second place. I wanted to secure a seat and serve the town. But I did learn a lot in the process, got to meet a lot of people, and assuming that I can get everyone that voted for me the last time and come this time, I think we'll have a better outcome.
Well, and I think part of that feedback was not only were you fairly new to the town, but also to do some things in town. So since that time, what have you been working on?
So I had the fortunate opportunity to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I absolutely loved, and I didn't know when I took it that I was going to enjoy it that much, but I really did, because the things that the town is growing. We have kind of one shot at getting the town right, so to speak, and all towns really have this, right? And our town being relatively younger town and still in the build-out phase, it was so much fun to work with trying to balance the needs of the citizens and the town and what we need here, and jobs and things for the kids and parks, and where are we going to put all these things and how we're going to fit it together. I just really enjoyed the work that I got to do there. The staff is outstanding in preparing us for those meetings. The feedback from the community in the meetings is wonderful. We're excited, a little bit nervous when there's 30 or 40 people that show up, but we really do appreciate the input and do our best to take that into account in the decisions we made. And of course, we refer those to council, and then they end up making the final decision and on the projects that we've approved.
So for somebody who may not know, what kind of things come through planning and zoning? What does a planning and zoning commissioner do, and what is the meeting like?
So someone who's wanting to, there's a few things that happen there. Some of the things with like general plan amendments would come through. Those are actually a little bit more exciting for me, but probably a little bit more boring for others. But it's like, what uses are we going to allow? What are we going to allow here and there in the town? And if there's a use that's coming up in the future that we think might need to be adjusted, we'll review those and say, okay, we see this on the horizon. This is the time we make these changes. Is this a good change for the town? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not, and someone's going to be upset a little bit either way, but we're trying to do the thing that balances the best decision for, not just for all the citizens today, but for the future citizens of our town. The other thing is, of course, we're building a lot of businesses and housing and all the things that come with a growing town. And that's the bulk and the majority of the cases that come forward. And what I've really enjoyed is the opportunity not only to see what's coming, shape those, and many times mine would voice my concerns if the particular use that they were proposing didn't quite fit. Other times it fits perfectly, and I know, so when these projects come forward, I try to share my input with the people presenting their projects and say, here's what I really like, here's what I'd like to see more of, or I'm not as big a fan here, is there something we can do here? And you'd be amazed at what you get just by asking. I mean, they're wanting to do something in town, and they want to work with us to do it the right way. So I think it's a lot. Maybe it's a little bit mysterious, but when you get right down to it, it's really straightforward of people trying to work together to do what's best for the town.
Well, you mentioned, well, first, how long have you been on planning and zoning, or how long were you on?
So it was 2 years and 4 months, give or take, a month or two. And I actually, it was kind of rough to say I need to step down, but when I knew I was going to pull my packet and then start collecting signatures, I thought it best. Just there could be some conflicts of interest, so I went ahead and resigned from that. And they've gotten a replacement, and they look like they're doing a great job as well. So I was happy about that. So yeah, about two and a quarter, 2 1/3 years.
And that's great, and we thank you for your service. Any type of the boards or advisory committees takes a lot of time, and we appreciate you doing those. That's what makes the town run. The general plan, Queen Creek has won an award consistently for its general plan, and one of the things that has really helped is that the town council tends to maintain that general plan. And so it directs where things are going to go, how much land is available for commercial, how much land is available for jobs, and then where the houses are going to be and how all of those things are going to come together. Tell us about the general plan and how you feel about it, and how you feel you'll be when you're deciding those things in council.
Yeah, the time, overall, it's pretty good. In fact, I'm surprised at how well it's held up. I mean, the original founders, and when they had the decision of trying to lay it out something that there wasn't that much there at the time, right? And figure out how can we do this. But they did a really, really good job. And I think the changes that have come and been proposed really fit with what's going on in the town. And so usually I can see why the applicant or why someone's requesting a particular change. It makes sense. And when it doesn't make sense, of course, it gives me pause to potentially say, no, I don't support that particular change. But generally they do their homework. They've done the research here in the town to see what we need and what we want specifically as well. So when they come forward, they're usually fairly well vetted prior to getting to us on planning and zoning, and of course even more so by the time they've gotten to council, because the P&Z committee has had that opportunity. One of the things that I think I really like about the general plan and everyone comments when they come to visit, and we kind of take it for granted a little bit, are the parks that we do have. They're just set aside. It doesn't look like we're just trying to fit a little piece, like a leftover thought, but it's planned for us to have a town that has parks that we can use and appreciate. And of course, there's an expense associated with that, right? So there's sometimes a little bit of a conflict there, but I think the way that they've laid it out and the plan that we have for those is money well spent, and it makes for a better quality of life in Queen Creek.
Well, I'm glad you brought up parks, because that's actually my next question.
I said they're great. Is there more to say, Chris?
That is true. But there is a parks plan that is a subcomponent of the general plan. And most of those parks are laid out. We just saw Mansell Carter completed a couple of years ago. And it's been a wonderful addition to the community. East Park, which is now Frontier Family Park, is coming online. Should have earth moving here pretty soon, and going to be another great addition, we think. Ball fields, splash pad, pickleball courts, all of those things that the community has been asking for, perhaps an aquatic center in there as well. So there's those that are waiting for parks, and there's a contingency that says parks are a waste of money and we shouldn't have any more. We do have a parks plan. It's gone through a process with volunteers, much like the planning and zoning, perhaps a smaller scale. And then they make their recommendations up, and it is part of the overall plan for the town. So how do you view those additional parks? Are you in favor of the parks plan? It sounds like you are, but tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I definitely am. It's within reason, right? Our build out the estimates tend to be 120 to 150. I mean, depending on how things shake out with the additional lands that we acquire from the state lands. And so, we're not going to build Disney World, right? We can't afford it and we can't support it. But, for quality of life that we don't need to be packed in quite as dense as other places. We need to balance the need for enough people to make businesses be able to thrive and have enough customers to work that. But I just, budgetarily, I would be a little bit of a budget hawk, but I think those dollars are well spent in the community. And when you have a happy community, it assists the safety of the community. So there's kind of ancillary benefits to the things that we do in the Parks and Recreation area. Again, we can't go overboard. We need to keep it in its proper place and understand the value that it brings and make sure that we're getting the value of the money spent. Because remember, all this money is generated by the citizens of the town for the most part. And so we need to be cognizant of their dollars and their wishes with it as well. And so, but generally in favor, and since my kids were all swimmers, of course, I think I'd probably be in favor of the aquatic center as well. Again, looking to balance our ability, what we're going to get from it versus the amount that it's going to cost, and it's quite expensive. So there would be some deeper dive on my part, even though that's something that I would want and am for, but I would make sure that I felt like we could afford to have that.
We've talked a little bit about land use now, parks and the general plan. One of the big economic drivers of the region is the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. And we have a substantial impact on the airport operations. So tell us what your thoughts are on Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, where it's headed, and how our land use may impact that.
Yeah, so I love the airport that's right there. In fact, it has a lot of destinations that I go to, so it's a great benefit for me. And living more on the west side of town, right, in Cortina, it's extremely convenient for me. I still think it has room for growth. I don't think that we want it to get too big, right? And that keeps in, I think one of the big themes in 2016, and I think it carries through to today, but we've already grown so much then, but we really wanted to keep the feel of Queen Creek. It's not the city of Queen Creek, it's the town of Queen Creek, and we want to have that smaller hometown feel. So it's a great convenience. I do see that it has room to grow, but there's probably going to be a little bit of a limiting factor because, we don't want, 10 flights an hour taking off and leaving from the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. So I love that it's there, but it's got to be kept within the, kind of in the bounds of what works in this part of town.
In regards to the land on the north side of town, would you put houses in those remaining areas? It's zoned industrial, commercial right now, but that's sort of loose. How do you see that area just south of the runways on the north side of town?
Right. So again, personally, I'd rather see it be a commercial use for the very fact of there is a noise component, and you're going to be right there, and there are going to be flights coming and going. But again, the same thing that we have houses and neighborhoods that are by the train, right? And there is noise around that. Does it become white noise for someone who lives there? I think it probably does a little bit. I have lived closer to an airport one time before, and I didn't notice as much. And it was busier than the one that we have. But I understand that some people may not appreciate that. So it's tough. If we have the commercial that can go there and it benefits the town, I think I'd rather have that there. I think it makes more sense to be there. And that's kind of my approach, Chris, when I was doing the planning and zoning, and I'll just share an experience. So I live in Cortina, and so our housing kind of size-wise goes from a little bit larger in the southwest corner. As we move up towards Benjamin Franklin High School and our northeast corner, they get a little bit more dense. And there was a project that was proposed just east of Ben Franklin, and it was a multifamily unit, and that's typically not really favored in Queen Creek, to be honest. And so when they do come And I know we need some more affordable housing, or kids and grandkids will never live near us. Its density mapped the progression across my own neighborhood. So that complex will be going in there. And it was funny because I had a few comments about it saying, well, I really wish Benjamin Franklin would use the property, or would buy it and use it for something in the school. It's like, me too, because I love Ben Franklin. I think it's a good school. My kids didn't go there, but the things that they've done there are really good. And then I found out, after the fact, that they actually owned the property. So Benjamin Franklin, the property was owned by them, and they didn't have a better use for it at the time. And so, and again, to think about that, it fits closer in density to what we call the island of Cortina, which is fairly dense for Queen Creek, and it's bordered by Rittenhouse Road and the railroad track. So it is kind of isolated and put in a smaller area, smaller footprint, and it fits about as good as we're going to get in Queen Creek. I don't know there's another spot that's going to be better for it. I'll see when they come. But same kind of thing. I use that kind of analysis to look at, does this really work? And in this case, I would prefer commercial that would work there, just because later on, we don't want the problem of, I've moved here and there was, 2 flights a day or 10 flights a day, and now there's 40 or 50, and I'm not happy. We can do a little advanced planning there and prevent that potentially, right? Of course, if someone brings a project, but we can put these type of houses there, and they're happy to be here because that's what they can afford as well. So again, need to balance those not competing interests, but competing what's going to happen 10 years from now. Have I made a good decision today that will benefit the town 10 and 20 years from now? So that's how I would approach the same for those lots as well.
Part of that answer then is about growth, and we've experienced tremendous growth. One of the things that we hear most often is about roadways. And so there are some who are saying they're going to build roadways as fast as possible. But tell us what your views are on the roads, and how you see that growth playing out.
Is there such a thing as fast as if it's fast as possible, it's still not fast enough, right? So I think one of the big things that's really going to help the town is the State Highway 24 that's going to be bringing through down to Santan Valley, kind of bypassing a lot of the traffic that's coming up through the town. It won't eliminate all of it, because the ones that are coming up the Hunt Highway and then to Ellsworth Loop, that's not going to go longer around to get to that side. But I think that will help, first of all. Yes, are they going to continue to grow, and it's going to be more city-like than town-like? Even with no changes, if we made it almost all commercial, so there's not a lot of new movement, it's still going to be an issue that's going to be something that hard to solve for. I worked actually a long time ago in traffic engineering in the city of Little Rock back in home, and those are not as simple, just like, oh, let's just move the road, right? There's millions and millions of dollars involved in trying to solve those problems, and then we have to weigh that against how big of a problem is it today? Are we having is it a safety issue? Are we creating a lot more accidents? Have we seen a rise in accidents because of the traffic? And we balance that off of, again, no fatal accidents. Like, there's no amount of money. Like, if we were having them, we should do it immediately if we keep seeing a consistent problem. But it is something that we're going to have to contend with. It may take some adjustments to the general plan about where we can say, what can we do to do this? And I'll look to the staff to brief us on the possibilities, and then make the best decision that we can from there.
You touched on a couple of different things there, but I think one of them would be, how do you see the general budget and capital improvements budgets, and how they are applied to the roadways themselves? So do you think it's possible to build any faster? Is there money that's not being spent that should be redirected? Is that even possible?
Well, no, I don't know. I would specifically say I know. Oh, we're spending on some of the capital budget over here that we should over there, and it wasn't part of P&Z, that piece of it. It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things when I was talking to John Cross, and we're talking about kind of the three prongs of the funding and where we get it from, and there's those that say that we need to spend a lot less and we need to lower the taxes, the tax burden on the citizens. And the difficulty there is that it's not egregious. Our burden by far in the country, it's some of the lowest. So could there be adjustments? And John said it's not as easy as we say, because we have to think, okay, if we make this adjustment, what happens? And we saw this a little bit before I got here, that we were in the recession right when I got here, or just about to come out of it. And the staff of the town, they laid people off, they cut a lot of things. And so I think from that perspective, the budget that's proposed by John Cross and the staff will be very conservative, trying to make sure that they maintain the proper funding that we're going to have. Now, once we have that, and really directly to your question, I think it's easy to see when it pops up and we're wasting it. It's easy to see, and we could, and I would be for, let's trim that here and move it over there. Again, assuming that, like we kind of laughed about, that it's going to speed up the process or make the process better for the capital improvements on our roadways. And I do think it's, you said I kind of touched on it, but I think it's important because, I made a kind of a mini post of priorities, and roads are one of them, but I tie it back to the safety of the town. It's not just about getting from point A to point B quickly and there's not a lot of traffic, but is it keeping us safe? And so anything that helps that, I'm usually for the safety.
Very good. Safety being a top priority, and we just started the police department, and we have the fire department already, and so those were all good things from the council's perspective. And one thing that we're concerned about is, of course, business-friendly council. What are your thoughts on business-friendly, and what does that mean in practical terms?
Yeah, well, I would consider myself probably pretty business-friendly. Just because I built houses, a few custom homes back in my home state of Arkansas, and took the risk that's associated with doing that. It's a much smaller scale. You have larger developers here and a few home builders that get the lots. Chris, in Arkansas, we have a fishbowl, and the lots are numbered, and you have a turn, and that's your lot, and then you get another one. So it's not on the same scale. But I appreciate the risk, not just that developers take, and not just that business owners take, because I owned a title company in Arkansas. I'm in the process of opening one now. I have my underwriting approval, but there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that go along with it. So generally, the people that supported me last time, they said, Matt, you're somebody we could support easily because you've been in our shoes and you listen to what we have to say. We're trying to develop this part of town in this way, or I'm trying to bring this business here, and I immediately can appreciate the risks that they're having to take to bring that there. And a lot of times, they'll ask me, so what do you think? There's a business that's going in that someone asked me to be a part of. I wasn't able to do it, but I was able to still talk about how I thought it'd be a great business. No real plug here, but it's the Seven Brothers burger place that'll be going in, and it's fantastic. But just that they know that they can talk to me about that in kind of a business term sense, and that I'm looking at those things from that perspective too as well. And again, looking at, is this a benefit to the town? Do we need this type of business? Is this something that's going to benefit everyone, not just the business owner or the developer? And so I think just by who I am, I end up being business friendly because I've been there. And the same with the developers. They know when I ask them for something, I'm not asking just to be, try to interrupt the process, but rather trying to get them to bring the best possible projects to the town.
Very good. Anything that we haven't touched on that you would like the folks to know?
I think we kind of touched on it, but when I ran in 2016, and there's no question that people said you're new, and have you served on the town, and there's no qualification or disqualification for that. And at the time I was like, well, that seems a little bit, it was just kind of a little bit different for me hearing that. And I probably discounted it a little bit more than what I thought. Not that it changed the way I campaigned, and I went out and, I knocked 2,000 or 3,000 doors, and I think that's why I did as well as I did, because people like to meet the person that they may or may not be voting for. I think what we're doing here today helps that. But I will say, having served on planning and zoning really did help me appreciate that no one was trying to say, hey, Matt, you're not qualified and you're not a good candidate. We just prefer that you've done some of that. And we have other candidates that are running that maybe haven't done that as well. And it's not a knock about who they are, but I understand now why people said that to me a little bit more than last time. And it's like, that's actually really a good thing to do that. It's not that you're more seasoned, it's just that you've been in some of the processes, right? Mine was planning and zoning, others will be Parks and Rec, some are Economic Development Commission. All of those things I think would help a candidate. So for this time around, I think I'm excited. Kind of a little bit later, to see kind of more of the excitement of the people that I'll be supporting in the campaign as well, and I'm grateful for their support as well. But it does make a difference, I think, for candidates to do that. And again, the other ones I'm sure are really good people and would be fine on the council as well. But I do think it does give a little bit more assurance that I've been committed to serving the town already. I know more about what's going on, certainly than I did in 2016. So I hope that helps other voters understand that I'm serious about serving the town.
Well, thank you again for your service on the planning and zoning. Thank you for running for office. It's never an easy job, and we appreciate your willingness to serve. Thanks for being here with us today. We appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.